What do you think the license to sell is, or how I would define it? What do you think I mean by license to sell? Ammunition, I heard. I heard training. Legitimacy. And I kind of feel like it's permission. There's a point in a conversation with a physician or a practitioner, this is kind of tight here, that I think that license happens. You're all of a sudden given that permission or that license to sell. If you think back a couple of months ago, we actually, with Suprats for AOM, when we came out with kind of the revised dialogue, we talked about the foundation and the house. We talked about laying that foundation with good questions, good information that we were uncovering, dialogue, because there's a lot we need to find out before we could just start putting that house up. Now, we've got a lot with Suprats and Antera and our other offerings. We've got a lot of great numbers, efficacy numbers, solutions, if you will. All the house-related stuff. But I don't know that we have a license to get to it until we've really laid that foundation. So when you think of phrases like these. Come on, there we go. 37% reduction, doctor. 12 to 13% improvement. $15 copay. The 94 versus 77. 98 versus 83 if we're talking about clinical cure. And oh my gosh, doctor, if we happen to be talking about that tag-along, we're talking 99.9. They're exciting numbers. We want to get to them. They're solutions, partially. They're great efficacy numbers. 94.5, doctor, with amoxicillin. Then if you look at another pathogens, you're down to 58, you're down to 9.6. Suprax, 99.9. We want to get to it. But none of the numbers are really solutions until we have needs that are uncovered. Now, the features or advantages, you can think in your head right now, features and advantages of all of our offerings, they're not perceived as benefits until we've uncovered needs and we've laid a foundation. Without a foundation, that's what happens to your house. You might get a onesie and twosie, but you don't have a habit writer. Because there was nothing good grounded upon that decision. I sold it about 3 months ago. I was thinking on my way here about a lawn service that I have. And I gotta be honest, I'm not the handiest guy at home. And so things like fertilizing lawns, pest control, weed and grub is something or other that they do. When someone sent me a letter 5 or 6 years ago saying, we can take care of this stuff, check off on this box which services you would like. I thought, one less job I have to do that I don't know how to do anyway. So I checked off what I thought was the logical things. 3 or 4 times a year, the fertilization. All right, my lawn sounds like it's going to be better. Ooh, that grub and weed control, that sounds important. Don't really know what a grub is, but the weed part I understand. I'm going for that. And the pesticide thing. 6 times a year, 5 times a year, they spray the base of your house. Then I see, like, last on the list, aeration, $40. Wasn't really so serious about it. I was going to call someone and ask, what is aeration? I'm thinking to myself, my lawn's outside. There's air going on. What else does someone need to do? And so I really didn't look into it. About 2 years later, a gentleman from the company called me and said, Mr. Romai, we're doing this services for you month to month, and notice you're not going for the aeration. We have new equipment now, and the new equipment is so much more efficient that we've been able to reduce the price of aeration by 30%. I said, boy, that sounds really interesting. I'll consider it. I'll think about it. They're putting up the house. They're giving me solutions. They don't really even understand my needs. I know that it's cheaper, less expensive. That's good. I know their equipment's more efficient. I guess that's good. I don't feel compelled to go for this aeration. Next year, someone calls up and says, I noticed you've been foregoing the aeration. How's all the other services? Fine. We got into a dialogue. He said, what are you really looking for in a lawn service company? And I said, well, ideally, and I started spouting off some of the things I'd like. I'm not home during the week a lot. I like to come home. I like to look at a lush yard. I like to not have any problems, no weeds, no this, no that. Somehow then, with a few other questions, this person basically convinced me this is a key part of your package. I'm really missing this aeration. I don't even know, if I were to explain to you right now, why I'm paying that extra $40. But I know that they took the time to uncover a need that I had by asking some early questions, laying a foundation, and then somehow they were able to build that house on top of it because they took the time to uncover my needs. The salesperson the previous year just wanted to go right after the house. You need it, it's inexpensive, and it's more efficient now. So I think about that in all that we sell, and I think to myself, you know, we did this a couple months ago with Suprax for AOM. We actually took this sheet, the dialogue, and we marked it in the middle. Now, from this point on, this was the foundation. Now this is the house. And I thought, that's really the way we should sell with every drug or every product that we have. We need to ask questions, uncover needs, and then position our drug or offering to somehow fulfill that need. Ideally, I always think about it when we're talking about Suprax for AOM. Because to me, this sheet, sell sheet, Suprax sell sheet, Harrison sell sheet, to me this sheet kind of screams foundation and house. And I got to thinking, you know what? I see this sheet in the field a lot. We've been using essentially something like this for years. And I think I see the house more often. And I think the house is the fun part. But we need to spend more time on the foundation. So when that dialogue was written, if you really took a look, and we'll take a look at Suprax tablets and Antera briefly for a moment here. When that dialogue was written, we laid it out to talk about what do we do first when we're talking about selling Suprax for the AOM indication. And sure enough, part of the foundation was asking their go-to, their initial, their first line therapy. Then, once we found that out, we were still building a foundation, hearing the response, and reinforcing that their amoxicillin activity is pretty decent visually for strep pneumo. We're starting off on a common path. From that point, we were bolstering the strep pneumo coverage by talking about the effects of Prevnar, maybe even quoting something from the Hedrick article to make them feel like they're doing a heck of a lot to address strep pneumo. But to make sure, we asked them, how well do you feel that you really addressed strep pneumo? We're still on the front. We're still building a foundation. They probably answered pretty well. Then we're asking them further. Do they feel that they've done all they reasonably can to address strep pneumo? I want it off the table. I want it off the table in the foundation part of this call. Once they agreed with that, finally we're getting there, but we're still in the foundation. So when not responding, what would you attribute that to? I know in my head I'm a question or two away from a potential house moment, if you want to call it that. It's sitting right next to the strep pneumo coverage. So I think in a lot of cases they're saying to me, well, what would I attribute it to? Well, Jim, you know we're not tapping the ears. And, you know, amoxicillin doesn't have really the H-fluid type coverage. They could see it. I can reinforce it. You're right. Not really cutting it when it comes to H-fluid cat. And finally, and that's why it's bolded, we can ask what sort of activity then they would want from a therapy. That to me is the cha-ching moment. When finally, cha-ching meaning a register ringing, we finally have a chance to make a sale. Finally the moment when we can go to the house. Before that moment, the house is irrelevant because the foundation is not laid. Now that probably made sense when we rolled out the AOM dialogue. But it's no real difference with Suprax tablets or Antera or for that matter AeroChamber or ViraCell or anything you sell in this life or another. So let's look at pharyngitis tonsillitis. What was our first question? Again, go to initial first therapy. Second question? Well, first we're hearing the response of traditional treatments like amoxicillin or penicillin. Foundation. We're asking, why not cutting it? Why do they think that is? I'm not going yet to efficacy with Suprax. We're hearing any combination of resistance, not working the way it used to, foundation. Share the current science. I think it's best to share it with our new reprint carrier. Sharing the current science as far as why this might be possible or plausible. Co-pathogens, co-aggregation. Hopefully see some interest. And ask the question, still foundation. Is that in line with what they've been experiencing? Check in by asking the plausibility or the possibility question. I guess anything's possible. And finally, again, the key question of if plausible, what attributes would they want? I don't have a license to sell until I have someone telling me, here's what I'm looking for in a drug. Otherwise, I'm just serving up the house. I'm serving up solutions, just like the Gardner guy did with telling me about cheaper and more efficient. It is a solution. It sounds good, but it's the sizzle without any of the groundwork. There's a cha-ching moment again with pharyngitis tonsillitis. Now, I don't want to steal Scott's thunder, but we've been talking about this concept of foundation in-house for a while. It's hard in some respects because we're in an office and we know we might only have 2 or 3 minutes or 1 or 2 minutes. Why do I want to spend time on that foundation when I really want to tell them 37% reduction, 12 to 13%, with or without food, $0 copay, 15 then up after that, you can really control it, doctor. I really want that out. And it is the fun information with Antera. But without finding out with that doctor, class of drugs they're utilizing after statins, what challenges they face, what are their HDL goals, what benefits are they looking for. We're fishing the whole time to hear something that will give us that cha-ching moment to give us that license to sell. Without it, without selling without a license, we'll hit some singles. But I don't think we can develop home runs, habit writers, that stick with the drug like I'm sticking with aeration until we really lay that foundation and then put up the good house. Your message, and it's a fun message, speaking about Suprax and Antera mostly right now, it's really powerful. I still can't get over I've been selling a drug for 8 years now that has a 99.9 anything. It's fun to sell, but your message is a lot more powerful, would be a lot more powerful if you've laid a foundation and created or uncovered needs. So to recap just for a moment here, short quiz. Who gives us, as representatives, the license to sell? Who gives it to us? Heard it? The physician, the practitioner. How does he or she give that to us?
Telling you their needs.
I heard needs. What did you say before that?
Telling you the needs.
Telling you the needs, verbalizing their needs. When does this happen? When do they verbalize their needs? When we uncover a need. And someone's already getting into this, how do we uncover those needs? Asking questions, creating dialogue, making conversation. You can't get to the house if you don't have a license until you take those steps. It takes longer, but I'll tell you what, if given a question, and we're not taking questions after this, but if given a question, what would you do, Jim, in a situation where you only have 2 minutes and the doctor said you got 1.5 minutes or whatever? I'd lay a foundation. I could put the house up in the next call. It doesn't make sense to try to put up a shaky house. I'd load myself up for bear with a lot of foundation stuff. I'd take that 1.5 minutes and I'd use it as my license to sell in the next call. Thank you. And it's my pleasure, though I was tempted to get into Antera, to have Scott Bomer joining us now to talk regional sales trainer to talk about Antera. Come on, Scott.